Reinke, an elderly man, lives in a nursing home. On this rainy and gloomy evening, the sweet young nurse Melissa came to visit one of her patients at home. Reinke's apartment turned out to be unlocked, which worried Melissa, as Reinke was in a wheelchair. He wasn't in the room either. The girl's panic grew when she discovered the patient's empty wheelchair. Melissa searched the entire apartment. The food in the kitchen had spoiled, and insects swarmed everywhere. Suddenly she heard hoarse breathing behind her. When she turned around, she saw Reinke standing on his feet, pleading for help. Before Melissa could even process what was happening, Reinke attacked the nurse, taking her life. Having done this, the old man burst into tears, then opened the window and looked outside. The conflict between generations has always been a relevant issue. No one knows exactly when things escalated so much that it turned into a catastrophe. On a hot summer day, Ella was heading to her hometown with her 2 children, Laura and Noah, for her sister's wedding. Laura, like her younger brother, still couldn't come to terms with their parents' divorce. Sana, Ella's younger sister, called via video chat. For Sana, this was the most important day of her life. She was finally marrying the man she loved, Malik. Noah was excited to see his father and grandfather. The boy missed them very much. Lucas, Ella's ex-husband, already had a new girlfriend, Kim. Sana and Malik warmly welcomed Ella and her children. Sana had always dreamed of having her wedding here, at their parents' house. These houses were very old, but Malik had worked hard to renovate them. Everything was ready for the upcoming wedding ceremony. From his grandfather's stories, Noah knew that underground tunnels ran between the houses on each property. Over 100 years ago, the servants used them to carry food. Ella thought that her and Sana's father still lived in the village, but it turned out he was now in a nursing home. She hadn't spoken to her father for a long time because he hadn't supported her divorce from Lucas. Laura hadn't forgotten her childhood friend, Alex, who invited her for a boat ride. While her mother, aunt and brother went to get their grandfather, she planned to have some fun. But first she made sure Noah, who suffered from asthma, hadn't forgotten his inhaler. Taking advantage of the absence of adults, the young people enjoyed the boat ride. Seeing his father after such a long separation, Noah ran into his arms. Despite the divorce, the former spouses had maintained a good relationship. When he learned that the sisters were on their way to pick up Yak, Lucas said that Kim was with him and would show them everything. As they drove through the village, Noah asked in surprise where all the people were. His mother replied that they were everywhere. But Noah insisted, there were only old people here. Indeed, almost nothing was left, except for the nursing home. When they stepped inside, Ella, Sana and Noah found food scattered across the floor. As they searched for Yak, they saw various elderly residents, some bedridden, others in wheelchairs. Suddenly an old man approached Ella, calling her Hannah and begging her to save him. Confused, Ella told him she wasn't Hannah. Somewhere muffled sobbing could be heard, frightening Ella and the others even more. A nurse named Lisa Askanek finally appeared. Sana explained that they were looking for Kim. Soon Kim also arrived, greeting the visitors who looked frightened. However, the girl's friendliness and energy slightly diluted the hopeless atmosphere of this place. Seeing a strange old man at the end of the hallway, Noah curiously followed him. While the boy was walking, he was surrounded by elderly residents with varying degrees of dementia. Noah politely greeted each of them. Finally Noah found his grandfather, sitting in a wheelchair by an open window. The boy told his grandfather that they wanted to invite him to the wedding. However, Yak no longer recognized his grandson or his daughters. Ella felt uneasy about how all the elderly people around were staring at her. Kim explained that visitors rarely came here, which was why the patients reacted this way. Meanwhile, Laura and Alex were walking along the beach. Alex offered to show the girl something and led her into the forest. They arrived at an ancient ancestral monument, which was almost 2,000 years old. Yak's family took him away. By the car, Noah turned around and once again saw the strange old man staring at him intensely. Seeing initials carved into the monument, Laura realized that her parents had also been here in their youth. Laura regretfully said that she would soon return to Berlin. Alex declared that he also wanted to get out of here and be with her. The wedding of Sana and Malik took place. All the guests congratulated the newlyweds, while the elderly, the lonely residents of this village, watched the celebration from the sidelines. Night had long fallen, yet the guests continued to celebrate. Only Yak sat with a vacant expression. Ella and Lucas finally had a chance to have an honest conversation. They had divorced because Ella had always dreamed of moving to the city and building a career as a lawyer, while Lucas was content with a quiet village life. Their conversation was interrupted by their children, who suggested that they all dance together. Seeing Lucas having a good time with his ex-wife and children, Kim became visibly upset. Sensing this, Lucas immediately turned his attention to her. Meanwhile, the elderly in the nursing home were not asleep, despite the late hour. Finding them gathered in one room, the orderly asked what kind of madhouse this was. His colleague, Lisa, felt like someone was watching her. The orderly assumed that the elderly were simply listening to the music coming from the wedding celebration. He joked that unfortunately they hadn't been invited and shut the window. Lisa saw an old woman in the basement trying to bite through a wire. Before Lisa could do anything, the power went out throughout the building. When the orderly tried to get the patients back to bed, they started reacting aggressively. While Lisa was trying to recover from the shock, the elderly surrounded her colleague. Hearing screams, Lisa rushed over but was too late. The enraged elderly had already fatally wounded the orderly. Some of them, like zombies, began to chase Lisa. She ran to the phone to call for help, but she had no chance. The nursing home turned into a place of brutal carnage. At night, heavy rain poured down. The wedding celebration had just ended. As he left, Lucas lingered, holding his gaze on his ex-wife for a long moment. Kim couldn't help but notice. Ella and Sana wished each other good night, and everyone went to their houses on the property that belonged to their parents. Kim directly asked Lucas if he still loved Ella. Lucas answered no. When Ella was putting Noah to bed, he said he wished everything was like it used to be. Yak lay on his bed with a distant look. Malik carried his wife into the house in his arms, where candles and flowers were placed everywhere. Sana was thrilled. Malik had made a great effort to create a romantic atmosphere. Beautiful music began to play. Malik promised Sana that he would love her forever. Nothing could ruin this magical night. Or could it? The newlyweds had no idea that someone had broken into their love nest. At first the old man wanted to take an axe, but then he changed his mind and unscrewed a heavy metal part from an old bed. He also took off his shoes in advance to avoid making unnecessary noise. Then he placed the metal ball inside his sock. When Lucas and Kim returned home, she noticed a silhouette of an old man nearby. It was obvious that he was an escaped patient from the nursing home. Somewhere from the direction of the village, screams and car alarms could be heard. There was no doubt something was happening there. By the time Sana and Malik noticed the old man, it was already too late. One by one he took the newlyweds' lives. Meanwhile, strange sounds resembling howling woke Ella up. She tried to turn on the light but the electricity was out. Then she checked Laura's room but she was not there. Ella searched the entire house for her daughter when suddenly a sharp noise made her flinch. Turning around, Ella saw Laura, who in shock said that the old people were rioting outside. Suddenly the sound of a piano playing filled the air. It was Yak. Returning to the village, Lucas and Kim stumbled upon the burning cars of the wedding guests. Bodies were everywhere. Lucas called the police, but all lines in their area were busy. When the old people spotted Lucas and started chasing him, he and Kim quickly got back into the car and drove away. What was Yak trying to say with his piano playing? His music was interrupted when someone started pounding on the door. When the knocking stopped, mother and daughter stepped outside to check what was going on. There stood the same old man who had previously called Ella Hannah at the nursing home. The old man tore a page from the Bible and handed it to Ella. The passage from the Holy Scripture called for honoring the elderly. When Laura, standing on the porch, saw a terrifying old woman in a wedding dress, she called for her mother in horror. Ella ordered her daughter to return inside and lock all the windows and doors. But there was also an old man inside the house, Yak. Ella headed to the neighboring house to check on Sana and Malik. But inside a horrifying sight awaited her. The newlyweds were dead. Ella broke down in tears, unwilling to believe her eyes. But she abruptly fell silent when she heard singing nearby. It was the same eerie old woman in a wedding dress. Suddenly the old people began to surround Ella, forcing her to escape through the window. She ran until she stumbled upon Lucas and Kim. The three of them kept running until they reached the house. Laura opened the door for them. The girl was barely holding herself together, not understanding what was happening to the old people. Noticing that Yak was gone, Ella realized that Noah might be in danger. They searched everywhere for Noah, but both he and Yak seemed to have vanished into thin air. Ella took out and loaded her father's gun. Lucas tried to stop Ella, but she was unwilling to back down and stepped outside. The house was surrounded by old people. With the gun in her hands, Ella ordered them to tell her where her son was. Spotting Yak in the crowd, she lunged at him, demanding to know where his grandson was. Kim and Laura realized that someone was inside the house. Despite her fear, Laura went to check and saw that someone had entered through the window. The girl tried not to make any noise, while Kim decided to follow Laura, not immediately noticing the strange old man sneaking up from behind. And he was not alone. One by one the elderly began crawling into the house. Kim, who had spent a long time caring for the elderly, pleaded with them not to harm her. Then the old people turned their attention to Laura. Hearing her daughter scream, Ella and Lucas rushed into the house and saw Kim praying. Through tears, she said that she had to do it. This house was crawling with zombie-like old people. The strange old man grabbed Lucas. Laura tried to help her father, but it was in vain. At the last moment Ella saved him by knocking out the strange old man. In a state of shock, Laura, Lucas and Ella embraced. Kim watched them. When Lucas asked her to shine the flashlight, she refused to help. In the end Lucas and Ella tied up the strange old man while he was still unconscious. The strange old man regained consciousness. Lucas only wanted to know where his child was. He couldn't understand why the elderly had turned against everyone with such hatred. Ella lost her patience and decided to resort to torture and threats. Suddenly the strange old man asked her who she saw before her, a human or an animal? At that moment Noah appeared. His parents and sister embraced him. It turned out that Jack had taken Noah to the attic to protect him. Suddenly the boy had an asthma attack. Laura urged her brother to breathe along with her. At that moment the family was more united than ever, while Kim felt like an outsider. The old people continued to surround the house, waiting for the right moment. And they hoped that the kind nurse would help them. Laura watched helplessly as the grandfather approached Noah with clearly ill intentions. Fortunately it was just a nightmare. Ella couldn't afford to lose vigilance for even a minute. She went into the bathroom to wash her wounds. Kim followed her to talk in private. Kim understood that Lucas would never love her as much as he loved Ella, who had abandoned him. And before Ella appeared, Kim had never had any problems with the elderly. Then Ella noticed that the front door was open. At that moment Kim knocked Ella out and dragged her onto the porch. When Ella regained consciousness, she saw her father before her, urging her to stay silent. The old people were preparing to attack. Lucas quickly realized that Kim had done it and rushed to help his ex-wife, but the elderly held her in their firm grip. They were trying to break into the house while also preventing those inside from escaping. Grabbing a fire extinguisher, Laura ran to her father's rescue. Realizing her plan had failed, Kim opened the window and jumped down. Before the shocked eyes of Laura, Ella and the others, the old people executed Kim. Madness was escalating. Lucas and Ella managed to barricade the door before most of the old people could get inside, but they were already unstoppable. Lucas suffered a fatal injury and was dying in Ella's arms. The old people set the house on fire, finally trapping their victims. Laura remembered that Noah had mentioned a servant's tunnel. Ella and the children managed to escape through it, but the old people continued to chase them. In the end Ella sacrificed herself to save her son and daughter. The old people dragged her away. The tunnel led Laura and Noah to another house. Laura was crying, while Noah could barely breathe. Here at least there was phone service. Alex had tried calling Laura multiple times. She called him back immediately. It turned out that his parents were dead too. The young people planned to reunite and escape from the village. Helping Noah walk, Laura opened the door and saw their grandfather. Suddenly the strange old man attacked Laura from behind. At that moment Laura remembered all the happiest moments of her life and began to sing their family song. Noah started singing along. This made Reinke's mind clear. He picked up the fallen gun and shot, taking the strange old man's life. Then Yak handed the gun back to Laura. He would never hurt his grandchildren. They all embraced as the enormous fire consumed the village. Laura and Noah escaped with their grandfather, realizing that these horrors were happening all over the world. The wretched souls of the lonely were spreading chaos, and only love had the power to heal them. By the shore, Alex picked up Noah, Yak and Laura in his boat. Hundreds of enraged old people were watching them. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.